Hello, gang. It's 4th of July. And this is one of my favorite holidays. Being born on the cusp of revolution and that being all about what I am. 4th of July is one of my favorite days. It's the day that we kicked the British Empire's ass and said, you know what, motherfuckers, this is our country. We're independent of you. We're not going to be your slaves. We're not going to pay your taxes. We're not going to sit around and listen to what you tell us to do anymore. Now, today, we're kind of in the midst of a new modern American Revolution. Because those pesky Brits ended up weaseling their fucking paws into our money-making process. Even though we have a constitution that's clearly stating that only the Congress has the power to create money in this country. Not no bitch-ass faggoty Rothschild banking cartels, not no British motherfucking empires, not no East India companies, none of those cocksuckers. The motherfucking Congress. So the Congress was always supposed to be the strongest motherfucking entity in the American government, because those motherfuckers are voted in every couple of years, right? So, what we have done in this country has become lazy as fuck. And we keep voting in these same people. I mean, a lot of the times no one even runs against them. How easy is it for these fucking cocksuckers to win and essentially be little fingers of the banking cartels if no one even runs against them? Now some schmuck runs against them. Now you've got the banking cartels' monies in order to smear campaigns all over. It's a rigged system at this stage, because what we do is we keep trying to play their games. And that's the whole cool thing about this movement of twin flame energy. We are the revolutionaries, you guys. We are ushering in a new system. Like the whole 3D fucking matrix that is controlled by this archonic energy is going down. It's been going on in humanity for a long period of time. Now, America was, in a sense, this experiment, if you will, to try to break away from that, right? For us to prove and show what it's like to be free, you know? But we've never achieved that in this country. We've never been Native Americans. We didn't go and in a sense, become native like the earlier, essentially the earlier whites is the best way that I can put it. It has come out now that the Peruvian skulls, the elongated skulls with the red hairs and what have you, they did DNA testing. Guess what? They fucking are exact matches for Scott-Irish type folks, right? Same thing over there in Egypt. Guess what? King Tut and Akhenaten, Queen Nefertiti, all them folks, same fucking DNA sequence as your Scott-Irish folks. Oddly enough, we have been around, we as in, you know, white folks, I guess you can say, around the world without raping and pillaging and destroying communities for a while. They were actually the Atlanteans, okay? So when you have the Atlanteans go under the water, what they were, in a sense, okay, were the whole story of the fallen angels that came down and mated with human beings. Human beings were created in different batches. So there's your different batches that you see, you know, your Asians, your Africans, your Middle Easterns and what have you. And essentially what took place is the creators, the Pleiadians, the Anunnaki, the whatever you want to fucking call them, ended up essentially banging and making hybrids and created what you see as your Nordic races. Now, these people obviously had a DNA structure that was different than the modern anatomically correct human at that time. Science is calling these people Cro-Magnons, okay? So Cro-Magnons, they're finding evidence of them in Europe with already developed brains and cultures and all of the above, when there's not supposed to be any of that. You know what, with it being 4th of July, let's come over here and sit under the American flag, y'all. Boom! So I'm gonna hang out and do my video right here under it. Old Glory. So what had happened, in a sense, is those Pleiadian races, those fallen angels, the stories that you end up hearing, ended up creating the Atlanteans, okay? Now, they felt like they were superior because they had that connection, that Pleiadian scientific mind, if you will, and all of this really disturbed the builder race, because what was happening is you are getting an interaction. It's kind of similar today is what you would see with those fucking old shrewds that have like, oh, I don't want my beautiful white kids to be interbreeding with those black peoples. It's the same kind of mentality. So when you see like the Pleiadian races looking at those half-breeds that were the Atlanteans, they didn't like what they were seeing because they were imposing on their work, if you will. So when you hear about the Great Flood, it was in a sense to take all of them motherfuckers out. I have reason to believe that's what happened when the moon was put into place, and that's what created that whole Great Flood. And what you had was Noah, who knows who the fuck it really was, but somebody ended up building, in a sense, a big vessel, and all of your domesticated seeds, all of your domesticated animals, not all the animals of the world, not all the plants of the world, but all of Atlanteans like seeds. Today, if we had a seed bank and an animal bank, you know, we wouldn't choose all the animals, we would choose the ones that benefit us the most, right? And that's essentially what they did. So they saved their race, their way of living in Atlantis, and then they essentially sprawled out. Some went down to South America, some ended up going to Egypt, some ended up going and falling on Mount Ararat or what have you, and taking over the European continent. All of that stuff happened roughly in 2 stages, okay? The very first stage happened about 13,000 years ago, and then the final blow happened roughly 12,000 years ago. And that's what more or less systematically took out the elongated skull people, the half-breeds, the what have yous. Now, I want you to understand something. What they did is did the same thing as the Denisovans, the same thing as the Neanderthals, the same thing as all of the different human races that have come and gone, that have been created, that have been manipulated and spliced into our DNA sequence. We have in our population of human being roughly 13 plus different species in our DNA sequence. Now, not everyone has, say, 13 different, species in their DNA sequence. It depends on where you're at. So folks in Asia will tend to have more Denisovans and hardly any Neanderthal DNA. That's known, that's proven. Most people in Europe will have very few Denisovan DNA in their sequence and then have more Neanderthal DNA. The same DNA that you're seeing in, like I said, the Paracas skulls and King Tut, they're the same DNA sequence, almost identical as Scott Irish and what have you. So you have this, I never put 2 and 2 together, but in England they really hate gingers. It's like in America, the whole the whole thing as far as segregation and, you know, like hating people. It's like the color of your skin, right? So that's what it's based on here in America. But over in Great Britain, it's actually having orange fucking hair, you know, being a ginger. It's because those people were, in a sense, the original folks of that land, if you will, the indigenous. So look at how Australia looks at the Aborigines, for instance. That's how Great Britain looks at the ginger population, because they were there whenever the Anglo-Saxons came and invaded. So what's happening here is you have, in a sense, a peaceful, more or less humbled Atlantean people, those gingers, these Rh negative bloodlines, the for lack of a better term, Aryans. You can look in, and a lot of that shit that has been tainted by Hitler and the Nazi history and what have you. You can look back before they were even in existence. And oddly enough, you see this culture did move around from Europe down through India. And that's actually, believe it or not, ancient knowledge. And that's why the Alexander the Great army ended up following the exact path they did to reconnect all of the peoples that are of those stories, of those lineages, of those bloodlines, okay? So the whole story you can really date all the way back to the Sumerian texts about Enki and Enlil, two brothers that came down to create the whole human species. Well, Enki, he was in a sense the master geneticist. He was the one that ended up creating all of us human beings. And what he did, he created us in such a way to where we were able to have that human spark. We were able to have the same prowess, the same intellect, the same powers as our creator race. Now, that first batch was all but eradicated because Enlil and the others in the Anunnaki didn't care too much about their slaves being of equal stature as them. You know, stature not necessarily meaning but the height, because they were taller. What they do, they come from a planet where they don't have such the intense gravitational pull as here. Think about Mars, for instance. So Mars doesn't have the gravity that Earth has. Now, when you have that going on, you actually have gravity pulling on you. You're not going to be as tall and lanky and have elongated skull as you would otherwise have on Mars. So these kind of things are where you get the similarities, the humanoid people, but the environment changes the structure of your bones, your DNA, your blood, all of the above. So because, let me get into the whole hybridization thing. This will bring things into perspective. Everyone's heard of a liger. Everyone's heard of a mule. Now, mules are supposed to be sterile, if you will. So, because, what is it, a cross between a horse and a donkey, a mule can't have any babies. Now, that isn't always the case when it comes to hybrids, like us, for instance. Now, when you look at a liger is, a female liger can actually breed with a male tiger and a male lion. Same kind of weird genetic things happen with us, the human beings. Now, Rh negative bloodlines cannot just breed with Rh positive bloodlines. The Rh negative mom will otherwise fight off the Rh positive blood, you know, the baby, and kill it off. So, for the longest time, you had no interaction with these two because it wouldn't mix. The thing is, there's anomalies that take place. There's anomalies that happen when you do have a positive breed with a negative and create something entirely different. And that happens on occasion throughout the ages and have created different anomalies in our DNA. More often than not, those anomalies are what they're mapping as you're seeing transition. When everybody says, oh, we all come from a single woman in out of Africa, such and such, it's because there's a certain sequence in the DNA that's mapped out that funnels into that particular set. So you've got all of these. Think about it in the code in code for computers. Your ones and zeros, ons and offs. It's just like that in DNA sequence, except if I'm not mistaken, you have 4 different A, B, C, and D, something of that nature, where you have the chance for it to be on and off. So you have 4 different sequences instead of 2, ones and zeros, which makes us a much more complicated computer. We are a quantum computer. Most people don't get that. Whatever computers are capable of doing, we're capable of doing better. What a quantum computer can do, go into another dimension and take information from that dimension, bring it back to ours. That's what we can do on a quantum scale. But because you're not taught these things in school, you think that it's all crazy. It's all Star Trek fucking science fiction nonsense. The thing is, all of that stuff is there, and in order to make it more palatable for you, because, for instance, let me use this whole Space Force thing. Donald Trump brings up Space Force. Now, Space Force has been around for roughly 50 plus years. The Nazis had what was called Die Glockten, which was the bell, which was a UFO. They ended up moving all their operation down to Antarctica, okay? So they just, in a sense, said, you know what, we're getting overwhelmed at this point. Move all of the fucking good stuff down to Antarctica, and we'll carry on from there. This behind closed doors Cold War and all the military industrial complex and Roswell and all this, all of the Nazis becoming part of our space program, all of it, the black operations, is Space Force. It's in a sense us figuring out, holy shit, these petty wars we're fighting amongst ourselves is not where it's at. There was a breakaway secret society that is, in a sense, in control of UFO technology, the ability to go back and forth to Mars without all of these pesky nonsenses that, you see on TV. I want to liken the space program to the American railroads. Okay, so the American railroads here in modern day times are still shoveling coal and fucking diesel into their trains, you guys. Over in Japan and Europe, these motherfuckers are floating on electric tracks going 400 plus miles an hour, getting you from point A to point B for little to nothing in extreme amounts of fucking time. But we're still shoveling some coal and diesel into our trains. I liken those to our rockets and space shuttle programs, okay? We've got technologies that is well beyond what they're telling you. Space Force is just to say, hey, dumbass American public that rather fucking be more interested in what's going on with the Kardashians. We're gonna make it. We're gonna open the doors to Space Force. Because you can't just fucking say, hey y'all, here's the aliens that made us. Everyone will freak the fuck out because they're a bunch of fucking peons. They're a bunch of worthless peons. They're running around, they're uneducated, they have zero fucking clue. You got to, spoon feed these people. Look at them. They're all over the place. So you got to use baby steps. Baby steps in order to fucking deliver these messages to people. But guess what? We are indeed in control of technologies that made us free from not only the Great Britons, but the Pleiadians. So the Pleiadians ended up stepping out of their parent race's shadow, the Arcturians. The Arcturians, bless them, for their help. The Arcturians are more or less our grandparents, so they are the ones that ended up putting a halt to all of this, like Pleiadians eradicating us. They came and said, hey, look here, motherfuckers. The blue people that you end up seeing in, you know, the gods for the Indian cultures, you know, the Arcturians came down and helped the human races from being eradicated. That's the reason why we're still here today. Their help right now is the reason why we're not eradicated before we were able to get smart enough to kind of defend ourselves. At this stage, we still are not completely capable of defending ourselves, but we'll put on a big ass fucking show, dude. We'll be a thorn in their goddamn sides. So at this stage, yeah, they're kind of feeling like, yeah, those pesky old humans, maybe they are something worth keeping around. Now, whenever we look at movies like We Created Something, for instance, you know, I was telling my brother about this over the weekend, you know, a few days ago, and we just so happened to be watching that Peace Among Worlds, Ricky and Morty episode. If you guys want to check that out, Ricky and Morty, Peace Among Worlds, it was actually where Rick had created this micro-universe and had its own people and what have you on this planet that created electricity. And he essentially stole the electricity in order to power his car, right? Well, he went in there because the battery stopped working. You want to see what the fuck. So he went in there, he disguises himself as an alien, comes in and is like, hey, everybody, you know, I'm an alien, I created you motherfuckers, yada yada, I'm God. Well, there was another scientist in the micro-universe that created a miniature race of people that would, in a sense, create electricity for them. So what he is, in a sense, discovering is that he has created this slave race in order to suck power from, just fucking, in a sense, power the battery for his car. Something just so minuscule that makes this little miniature race seem, we can just stomp on them anytime we want to, right? Hell with those people. Well, that's the Pleiadians for us. They created us. They feel superior to us. The whole race thing is surrounded by that. Because you have more Pleiadian blood, you feel more superior to all the other races that were created. You know, because the races of the Pleiadians interacting with human beings were brought on naturally, opposed to those that were created in laboratories. That's where all of this fucking shit derives from. But at this stage, we are all intermingling and have a pretty fucking diverse DNA sequence at this time. Everyone has interacted with everyone, and there are lots of different... It's like dogs, for instance. All of the different varieties of dogs can all breed with one another, even though, say, like a Great Dane breeding with a Chihuahua, if it was to take, that Chihuahua would die from it. Okay, much like, you know, a lot of situations where you had people dying in childbirth, these things still take place. We're not above the way things work in the natural scheme of things. We can manipulate things, we can have our DNA manipulated into doing something, but in all honesty, it still works itself out. The evolutionary processes still work themselves out. And that's what's taken place. We have, in a sense, not just become free from colonial powers this day. We stood up time and time again in this country to powers that were bigger than ourselves and proved that we are still a thorn in your motherfucking sides. The reason why America is an idea that will not go away, because here in this country, the individual person owns a piece of property. Now when you do that, those individual people, I'm getting chills just thinking about it, will fucking gnaw faces off, dude. They will fucking do whatever they have to do to keep invaders from fucking up their little piece of land, their family, their little home. When you have slaves beaten and talked into to work labor camps for their kings and queens, those people will not give you the fight that my people will fucking give you. America will bite your fucking faces off if that's what it has to come down to it. We will fight you to the death because this shit right here belongs to us and not your fucking queen or kings. No, it's ours. So there's a fight in us that you won't see in other people. You fucking think that because you see stuff on the news about us being divided, please, you motherfuckers, anybody, any entity tries to take this away from us, we will bite your fucking faces off. That's what the 4th of July is, expressing our extreme fucking urge to destroy anybody that tries to take this away. That's exactly what is going on in the cosmos today. Freedom, liberty, the freedom to do the things that you want to do under God's laws. Under God's laws. You have to obey the laws of physics. You have to obey your own personal moral code. If you ever step out of line of those two things, your karma will give you a reason to have things done, whether it's good, whether it's bad. The best thing about this whole situation is creating a balance, that fine spot in between where life is held in balance, in check. Whether the darkness overruns the light overruns the darkness, you always have a particular spot in the middle where life resides in harmony and balance. And that's where we're at. I want you to understand that light, that's God, all right, but what you're doing is trying to separate God from the other side. God is the eternal, the all, the everything. The darkness, the light. Stars cannot shine without the darkness, you guys. All of it is necessary in this process. All of it is balance. The hardest thing is explaining to both sides, let's meet in the middle and be friends, motherfuckers. That's what I'm here to do. That's what I'm going to do until I die. This day, July 4th, is the day that all of us that have felt the same feelings that I feel of rebellion and revolution and standing your ground. It's the day we say, fuck yeah, we're righteous, we're powerful, we're united, and we're not your fucking slaves anymore. Love you guys. Happy 4th of July.